Have you ever felt like your code is fighting you? Like no matter what you do, there's always some edge case, some sneaky bug or just plain old configuration chaos that ruins your day. Well, hold on tight because the Spring Framework 6.2 update is here and it's going to flip your development process upside down. Or will it? Here's the big question. Are you really ready for what's coming? Because let me tell you, this is not your average update. That's stock requirements. Did you know that Spring Framework 6.2 is raising the bar? We are talking minimum compatible upgrades. You are not just updating Spring anymore. You're looking at GraalVM native image support, Hibernate 6.5 and even protobuf. Think you can just breeze past that? Think again, because if your stack isn't ready, you aren't ready. And then there is removed APIs. Yes, removed, as in gone, forever. Those little shortcuts or deprecated methods you've been leaning on. Bye bye. Now the core container. This is where things get real. The new auto-wiring algorithm completely revised. What does that mean for you? Well, let's just say if you've been cutting corners with qualifier or playing fast and loose with priority, you're in for surprise, and not the good kind. Spring now demands clarity, no shortcuts, no sleepiness. It's do or die for your generic type matching. Mismatch a single type signature and boom, you're debugging for hours, maybe days. And that's not all. Component scanning, yeah, they moved it earlier in the lifecycle, which sounds great until you realize it breaks your conditional on being logic. Suddenly that perfectly functional setup you relied on, completely useless, and the worst part, you'll never see it coming. Let's talk overrides. You've been overriding bean definitions, haven't you? Don't lie, we all done this. But Spring 6.2 is watching, logging every single override. You can silence it? Sure, but deep down you know that Spring way of saying stop cutting corners. This isn't just a warning, it's a wake-up call. So here's the truth, this update isn't just about new features or bug fix, it's a reckoning, a line in the sand. Are you a disciplined developer who's ready to embrace these changes, or are you the one who's going to crumble under the weight of it all? The choice is yours, but remember, Spring Framework 6.2 doesn't care if you're ready or not. Let's dive into Spring expression language. If you thought your spell expressions were bulletproof, think again, because now property accessors that specify target types take precedence over generic fallback accessors. Sound harmless, right? This change can completely upend how your expressions behave. That reflective property accessor you've relied on a safety net, it's no longer the hero. Suddenly your custom accessor might be taking center stage, whether you want them to or not. If your spell expressions start misbehaving, here's your reality check. You might need to rewrite your can read and can write implementations. Let me say that again. Rewrite, not tweak, not patch, rewrite. And if that sounds like a headache, just wait until you realize you also need to rethink the order in which you register your accessors. One misstep and your application is throwing errors faster than you can say Spring Update. Now let's talk HTTP clients, specifically the REST client API. Do you like? In this version there is no OP. Yes, you heard that right. No OP. Your HTTP request is not going anywhere unless you explicitly invoke a terminal operation. Let me paint the picture for you. You upgrade to 6.2, you run your app and nothing, no request, no log, just silence. You start questioning your code, your tools, your life, and then you realize, oh, you need to call to bodiless entity or some other terminal operation. Of course, how could you forget? And just when you thought Spring Framework 6.2 couldn't shake things up anymore, let's talk about web application. If you're being casually configuring static resources location without a care in the world, here's your wake-up call. Locations now require a trailing slash. Yes, require. Why? Because without it, the last segment of your path gets silently dropped when appending the request path with resource create relative. You might think, how often does this happen? Trust me, once is enough to break production, and now functional endpoints have an assert in place to ensure that the trailing slash is there. It's not just a best practice anymore, it's mandatory. And then there is the web jars. Remember, the trusty of the locator core. Well, it's officially deprecated. Why? Efficiency issues. That's right, it's out. And locator light, it's in. The light web jars resource resolver is here to save the day, but don't get too comfortable. This shift might seem minor, but if your application relies heavily on web jars, you'll need to make this switch. It's time to future-proof your code, or risk being left behind. Now, for all your messaging applications enthusiasts, strap in. Let's talk GMS. The default message listener container is getting a serious overhaul with its idle receive per task limit semantics. What does that mean for you? For starters, core threads now stay alive, no exceptions. Only the extra consumers, those between concurrent consumers and max concurrent consumers, will time out after the specified number of idle receives. But here's a kicker: if you're using max messages per task, that limit now affects core consumers too. This isn't just a tweak, it's a whole new way of handling idle threads and dynamically scheduling. If you're not paying attention, this change could throw your entire messaging setup into disarray. Now let's talk about testing. This is where the details can quietly wreak havoc if you're not paying close attention. HTML unit, yes, that familiar tool you've relied on, has officially moved to a new major release. If you want to move from 2 to 3 version, you're going to need to make some adjustment. If you're using HTML unit with Selenium, things just got even more interesting. The coordinates for the driver changed. No, this isn't just a cosmetic tweak, it's fundamental change. The HTML unit driver now matches your Selenium version. So for example, if you're running Selenium version on one version, you'll need to use HTML unit driver the same version. Forget to align these versions and you might find yourself in a testing nightmare where nothing connects. Now let's move on the new and noteworthy features of Spring Framework 6.2, and trust me, these updates might seem small at first glance, but their impact could completely change how you approach your configuration. First up, escaping properly placeholders. It means now Spring Framework can escape placeholders using a configurable escape character. By the way, the backslash by default now. Now let's talk about fallback beans. This one a game changer. Picture this, you've got a component that depends on a specific bean, let's say my service. In the past, if you wanted to provide a default implementation for my service while allowing the user to inject their own, things got complicated. You'd have to use primary and hope everything work out. But no more. With new introduction of fallback, Spring Framework 6.2 is rewriting the rules. Now you can define a fallback bean that only gets used if no other beans of that type is provided. But here's the real takeaway: this isn't just about fallback beans, it's about empowering you as a developer. It's about giving you the flexibility to define defaults without compromising on usability. It's about making your application smarter, more adaptable, and more resilient. There are actually some more updates, but let's talk about this next time. See you later.